CEO Daddy. Chapter 1248. Excessive Worry. Alvina Miller only explained that she ate a few chocolates she brought along because she was hungry, causing Kelly to convince her. As an old employee, Kelly could not help but scold her a few times, telling her to follow the rules and follow a good example. Alvina Miller lowered her head and kept on answering. When they got off work, it was already 9:30. The two of them walked out of the office building. Kelly suddenly stopped in her tracks, and then spoke with a face full of shame. Alvina, can you send me home? At this late hour, I don't dare to ride my bike back. There are a lot of hooligans on the street where I live, so I am afraid that it wouldn't be safe. Sure, let's go. A beauty like you returning late by yourself is certainly not safe. Alvina Miller was very willing to help her. Really? Thank you so much. Kelly did not expect Alvina to be so straightforward, and her face was full of joy as she expressed her gratitude. It is a simple task. Besides, we're colleagues, so there's no need to be so polite. Alvina Miller laughed and opened up her small red sports car. It was truly small, and if it wasn't the cool and dazzling sports car, it was the kind that two people would ride in. Alvina, do you buy this car yourself? Kelly sat inside and realized that the decorations inside the car were extremely beautiful, as though it was driven by a girl. No, it's a gift from my grandpa. I haven't even started making money myself. I can't help but reach out to my family for more food and clothes. I'm so embarrassed, to be honest. She was going to the office for the first time in her life, and she wouldn't be paid until the end of next month. The envy on Kelly's face was hard to conceal, and she couldn't help but exclaim, "It's really good to have money in your family, unlike me, who has bad family conditions, and my salary is divided into half to subsidize my family every month." Alvina Miller saw that her own words made Kelly sad, and immediately stopped talking. She said smilingly, "You will definitely lead a good life in the future. I should also learn from you, and earn money myself. Alvina, you have a really good personality. You are very kind. You look like a lady from a noble family. There must be a lot of people chasing after you." Kelly was genuinely envious of her. "If I say, not much, do you think I'm lying? But in fact, there aren't that many. In the past, there had been people chasing after her at school, but later on, for some reason, the men began to distance themselves from her. They could vaguely hear that she was boring, rigid, and wouldn't withdraw from them, and so on. After that, Alvina Miller had a shadow of the man chasing her. Whenever a man got close to her, she would hide far away, no longer allowing him to speak ill of her. Over time, all the men who knew her knew that she had a bad personality and didn't know her. So they just blinked at her in a hurry and disappeared into the vast crowd. Don't be modest. I think you're quite likable. After coming to the office, everyone can become friends with you. Unlike me, I've worked here for more than half a year and few people have truly befriended me. You're the only one who doesn't mind being my friend." Kelly laughed at herself. Alvina Miller was startled. After thinking about it, Kelly did not seem to be popular in the office. It might be related to her personality. As long as you treat others sincerely, there will naturally be people who like you. Don't worry. Alvina Miller's car was already driving out of the city. She casually asked, "Which side do you live in?" "Turn left on the street ahead, after 2 traffic lights. We'll be there." Kelly hurriedly led the way. Alvina Miller drove the car to the area Kelly talked about. And then Alvina realized that there was actually an old city district in this area, which had not been opened for a long time, and the entire street looked extremely messy. My house is right in front. Just let me down by the roadside. Kelly also felt that it was shameful. She had always kept her residence hidden, but now, Alvina Miller saw it. Alvina Miller stopped the car, and after Kelly got off, Alvina said with concern, "The street lights here are broken quite a bit. Be careful." "I will." "Hurry back." Kelly closed the car door and waved to her, then turned and walked back onto the small road. Alvina Miller turned the car around, preparing to return, when suddenly she saw a few society members in front of her riding a few locomotives, smiling at her while tilting their heads. Alvina Miller frowned. No wonder Kelly did not dare to come back so late. It seemed that it was really a place filled with mermaids. It was really a place to be at ease for a girl. Alvina Miller's foot stepped on the throttle until it reached the bottom, and the locomotives actually turned and chased after her for a distance, before dispersing and leaving. "What are these bastards doing?" Alvina Miller clenched her teeth in anger. It was fortunate that she ran away quickly. Otherwise, those people wouldn't really do anything to her, would they? Alvina Miller suddenly felt that Kelly was very pitiful, living in this kind of insecure street. Not only her, many of the people living here would also be affected by the influence of the society. As a good citizen, I have the authority to bring this up with the Mr. Vice President. Alvina Miller drove her car, and quickly returned home. At that moment, it was already 11 p.m., and the lights in the living room were bright. Just as her sports car was extinguished, she saw a tall figure quickly walking out from the living room. "Alvina Miller, where do you go?" Joseph Grant had calculated her time before returning home, but he never expected that she would actually return half an hour later. "I sent a colleague home. Why are you still waiting here? Do you worry about me?" Alvina Miller placed her hands on the door of the car, looking like a playboy. If she had any grass stuck in her mouth at the moment, she was afraid that someone would accuse her of teasing a beautiful guy from a good family. "From now on, you're not allowed to run around outside. Do you understand?" Joseph Grant was completely captivated by her playful smile, and it was as if he was electrocuted by her eyes. "Don't worry, I won't run around. I know the way home." Alvina Miller looked like she didn't care at all as she dragged her petite body weakly towards the living room. "At present, no one knows about your relationship with me, but this matter will be made public sooner or later. I treat you strictly, not because I care about you, but because I'm worried for your safety." Joseph Grant was afraid that she would hate him for speaking too much. Hence he started to explain with a low voice. "I know, my Lord Vice President. Do you have water? It's going to be hot." Alvina Miller leaned on the sofa with a smile and asked. Joseph Grant turned around and poured her a cup of water. "I'll rub it for you. It hurts, but are you really willing to do this for me?" Alvina Miller asked as she drank her water. "Why not? Don't you say that you do to work for me? Since you do this for me, it's only right for me to do something for you." Joseph Grant's thin lips curled up into a smile of ridicule. Do you hear those rumors? I'm really sorry. I don't mean to spread it. I just casually mention it to a colleague. I don't expect the entire office to be asking me." This was the first time Alvina Miller had felt the power of public opinion. It was simply too frightening. "I don't blame you." Seeing her apologize, Joseph Grant immediately replied softly, "Really? Don't you blame me for talking too much?" Alvina Miller was a little happy. Joseph Grant laughed helplessly and replied, "What do you want to say about your freedom? Moreover, you already say it. You don't do it on purpose. How can I blame you? Oh right, I have something to tell you. When I am escorting my colleagues home, I almost get chased by a few men riding on a locomotive. That street is not very peaceful. Can you think of a way to fix it?" Alvina Miller asked with a serious face. "Which street?" Joseph Grant squinted and the danger passed. Someone was actually chasing after her car. "Let me think for a moment. That's right, that street is called Street Hacker. I can't remember the specific street, but it is still an old city district. Although it isn't big, it gives off a gloomy feeling," Alvina Miller recalled. "I know where you're talking about. It's just that no one is willing to develop that area. Coincidentally, I am also looking for your grandfather to discuss this matter, and I want to destroy that old city. The cost is huge, but this is also an opportunity to build a meritorious service. If I can take care of it, it will be beneficial for my reputation." When Joseph Grant heard her mention it, he immediately knew where it was. Chapter 1249, "What kind of like?" said clearly. Alvina Miller was startled for a moment when she saw the man's serious expression. She didn't know why she liked to see men speak in all seriousness. Joseph Grant cast a sidelong glance at her, and then gently extended his hand, pushing a few strands of hair that was scattered by the side of her ear behind her ear. He said in a warm voice, "Don't worry, since you mention this matter, I will definitely take care of it. Don't go to that street next time. I don't want you in danger." Alvina Miller obediently nodded her head. "Okay, then I won't be going next time. But that colleague of mine, do you really care about her?" Joseph Grant was a little surprised. Although he was the leader of the nation and the things he did were for the citizens, he was not meticulous enough to truly care about them. He only treated this as a hard work for his people. Alvina Miller had only been at work for a few days, yet she was already so concerned for her colleagues. It could be seen that she had a very good heart. Joseph Grant's gaze became a little gentle. He extended his arm and caressed the back of her hand. "Isn't there a workers' dormitory? If your friend is willing to apply, I can help you get in a relationship behind the scenes." "Really? But I remember that staff dormitory requires a certain level of application. We are just the lowest level of employees. Do we have the authority?" Alvina Miller didn't want to make it difficult for him, so she didn't dare to be so optimistic. Let her wait for another month. The new dorm building in the southern courtyard is almost ready to be occupied. At that time, I will strive to let staff of your level enjoy this kind of treatment," Joseph Grant said in a low voice. "Joseph Grant, you're such a good person." Alvina Miller looked at him with her beautiful eyes. Joseph Grant was slightly startled. He was only doing what he should be doing. Why was this woman looking at him with such an infatuated expression? Alvina Miller blinked her eyes, and suddenly became a little shy. She lowered her head and said softly, "I've heard a lot about you from work. I don't know what kind of person you are in the past, but now I realize that there's actually a reason why your prestige is so high. Everything you do is for the sake of the citizens and the country. Doing things for the country and seeking blessings for the people had always been Joseph Grant's dream of pursuing his career, but no one had ever said these words in front of him. He was slightly startled, seeing that the man was silent. Alvina Miller only used her deep gaze to sweep across his face. She became even more embarrassed, and used her hand to cover her face. Am I talking nonsense again? I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to take a shower first. Just as Alvina Miller stood up, she suddenly felt a big hand hug her waist, causing her entire body to fall backwards, falling into the man's firm and warm embrace. Alvina Miller, do you like me? Alvina Miller heard the man's low and hoarse voice, which sounded a bit pitiful. The man's thin lips moved towards Alvina Miller, causing her to feel hot. Alvina Miller's mind buzzed, and there was a moment of blankness, and her beautiful face became boiling hot, and her face turned red like fire. I like you, Alvina Miller replied softly. Which kind of like? Joseph Grant seemed to be angry, as he bit her ear. The electric current shot straight to the bottom of Alvina Miller's heart, causing her to tremble uncontrollably. Alvina was unable to think about anything for a moment, nor could she say anything that would satisfy the man. I like you. Are there different types? How could I not know? Alvina Miller's petite body froze into stone in the man's embrace. She did not dare to move even a bit, and tried her best to figure out what he meant. Joseph Grant heard that her answer was actually so vague. There was even a hint of anger in his voice. You just said that I'm a good person, and is that why you like me? That's right. Alvina Miller nodded and replied shamelessly. No. The man immediately increased his strength and bit Alvina Miller, causing her to feel pain. Alvina immediately reached out to push him, but she didn't expect it when she turned around. Joseph Grant's fingers would reach over and tightly grip her chin. That pair of deep eyes were dyed with a darkness that Alvina Miller couldn't understand. You. What else do you want? I like you. Can't I? Alvina Miller was about to be confused by him. Her mind was buzzing. If it's just because I'm nice and capable, everyone will like me. But that kind of love is not what I want. I hope you like me because as Joseph Grant said till the end, he actually couldn't even express his own meaning clearly, and his eyes showed slight surprise. Of course, I'm different from other people who like you. I like you because your face, figure, and temperament all match up to me. Before she could finish her words, she was hastily interrupted by a man. He kissed her on her lips in a somewhat crazy yet somewhat unwilling manner, stopping her from speaking any further. Alvina Miller's mind was completely blank. Right now, she was sitting in the man's warm embrace, stiff like a statue, and was unable to move. Instinctively, she reached out and grabbed onto the clothes of the man's suit to prevent herself from falling down due to helplessness. Joseph Grant also didn't know what had happened to him. He had lost control just now and wanted to kiss her. At this moment, after truly touching her lips, the man's soul was about to be lost. The sweet taste was as enchanting as the fragrance of roses. It was a deep night outside the window and the atmosphere in the living room was thick. Alvina Miller felt that her breathing had almost stopped, and reached out a few times to push the man away. However, the man didn't let her go. It wasn't until his breathing became heavier that he let go of the hand on the back of her head and let go of her. The two of them no longer dared to look at each other. They could only hear the heavy breathing of the other. I'm going to take a bath, Alvina Miller said softly, and immediately stood up from his legs. Joseph Grant did not dare think further. He nodded his head, and said softly, all right. Alvina Miller ran up the stairs with quick steps, her heart racing. Oh my God, that feeling just now was simply enough to make one's heart palpitate. Her face was burning with shyness. She lowered her head and let out a laugh. This was a rare experience. Joseph Grant stared blankly at the door for a while, then recovered his senses. Wasn't he too overbearing just now, too unreasonable? But he really wanted to know what she felt about him. If it was just that she liked him as much as everyone else, he would be so flustered that he would have to force her to speak her mind. That night, the two of them were separated by several walls and both of them were completely awake. The reason Alvina Miller did not sleep was because she knew that she would not have to go to work the next day. Joseph Grant was unable to sleep. The happiness in his heart and the changes in his body had always made it difficult for him to sleep. Until the early morning, when Alvina Miller was still in a daze, she felt someone push open the door and bring in a ray of warm sunlight. Once she was pierced by the light, she immediately turned over lazily and continued sleeping with her back to the door. "Not working today?" The man's voice sounded beside her ear. "No, I'm on vacation today." The woman was still muttering in her sleep. "All right, then I'll go to the office first. If there's nothing else in the afternoon, I'll be back to accompany you," Joseph Grant said softly. Alvina Miller immediately opened her eyes and turned to look at him. "Will you be back in the afternoon?" What is it?" Joseph Grant chuckled. "It's nothing. It's just that my grandfather called me the day before yesterday and told me when he wanted me to invite you over for a meal," Alvina Miller said while beaming. "Do you want me to go?" Joseph Grant was startled, but soon after, he asked with a smile. Alvina Miller hurriedly sat up from the bed and nodded with a serious expression. "Of course, when my grandfather wants to treat you to a meal, he has already tacitly acknowledged our relationship." Joseph Grant's gaze suddenly turned deeper as he looked at her slightly opened sleeves. Alvina Miller saw that there was something wrong with his expression, and looked down. The buttons on her pajamas were actually opened, and from his angle, he could see the scenery inside. "Hey, I tell you something serious. Where are you looking?" Alvina Miller was immediately angry. Joseph Grant lightly coughed to hide his embarrassment. I'll be back with you in the afternoon." After saying that, the man stood up and quickly turned around to leave. Only then did Alvina Miller stretch out her hand to grab onto her own clothes. She was not angry. Instead, she was happy. Joseph Grant walked out of her room, took a deep breath, and glanced sideways. Looking at the door, his thin lips couldn't help but twitch. Chapter 1250, To Come and Leave with Grievance. After admitting her wrongs to Elizabeth, Patty Jones explained it again in front of the media. She thought that this would at least quell Joshua's anger, but Joshua still stopped all of her announcements, causing her to have nothing to do at home. She was almost driven insane. Not only that, she discovered that her father and stepmother Lily's relationship had unknowingly become extremely tense. After Barry returned home drunk for many times, Patty Jones couldn't help but ask his father. "She hates me," Barry said. "How could she hate you? What do you do wrong? Is she still being reasonable? You are the one who give her the food, and the two little brothers are still so young. Why she still quarrels with you?" Patty realized that this family was getting more and more out of place. Previously, when she felt that Elizabeth was chased out, she could treat Lily as her stepmother, but now, she realized that even if Elizabeth was chased away, this family would still not look good. "She resents me pushing Elizabeth out to die." Recently, Barry's life had been extremely bad. After Lily was kidnapped, he made an appointment with Elizabeth, causing Elizabeth to be shot and injured. Lily had always blamed herself, and Lily even hated him for nearly causing Elizabeth to lose Elizabeth's life in order to save her. How can she blame you? You're saving her. Lily had always treated Elizabeth as her own daughter, and she was indeed unwilling to use Elizabeth's life in exchange for hers. But wasn't everyone supposed to be selfish? Patty didn't feel that there was anything wrong with her father doing this, and it was Elizabeth's fault as well. It was all her fault, yet in the end, she had caused everyone to go and suffer. Maybe it is my fault. Lily used to be so good to me, but I don't understand her thoughts. She would rather die than have Elizabeth come out and die, but we still have 2 children. Does she really want to die like this? Barry was so angry that he was about to collapse. I'll go find Elizabeth and plead for justice. No matter how insensible Patty Jones was, this concerned her father, and concerned the peace and harmony of this family. She still decided to look for Elizabeth, and ask her for help. Barry was in a bad mood and did not bother to care about his daughter's actions. In the early morning of the next day, Patty Jones drove to Elizabeth's villa. This time, not only did she request for Elizabeth to come forward to plead for mercy, she also wanted to go and apologize and change her job. Patty Jones pressed the doorbell, and May and Fiona expressionlessly stood by the door as they looked at her. I'm looking for Elizabeth. I'm here to apologize. Patty Jones saw that the 2 women did not look good and immediately pleaded kindly. Come in. May really liked seeing Patty Jones apologize. Elizabeth was sitting in the living room drinking water. When Patty Jones walked in, she looked a little uncomfortable, but she still walked over and said, Elizabeth, regarding the matter of Lily being tied up, my father invites you out but hurt yourself. Lily has never forgiven my father. I believe you definitely don't want to see them having a bad relationship either, right? Elizabeth's expression froze for a moment, and then, she frowned. I will go and advise my aunt. Don't worry. This matter started because of her, and now that her aunt's marriage was at odds, she was indeed responsible. Are you really going to persuade her? Patty Jones was in disbelief. She felt that Elizabeth did not have such good intentions. Elizabeth knew that Patty was suspecting her, and said indifferently, I have already left Jones' family, without me. I hope that my aunt can be happy, and I also hope that you do not make things difficult for her. After all, she has given birth to 2 children. Patty Jones snorted. I've always been against you. If you don't disturb our family's peace, of course I'll treat her well. That's good. I hope you can keep your word. Go back first. Elizabeth really did not know anything about this matter, although she would also call her aunt on the phone, but her aunt did not say anything. Elizabeth, I have ulterior motives for causing a misunderstanding between you and Mr. Wilson. Will you still forgive me? There was a trace of shame in Patty Jones's eyes. Elizabeth looked at her eyes and saw Patty avoiding her gaze. Presumably, Patty really knew that this matter was not good. This matter isn't worth 3. Don't do it again, Elizabeth said with an indifferent expression. I don't dare anymore. I know I am wrong. In order to save her own life, Patty Jones was willing to do anything. This is the first time you've ever been willing to admit your wrongs to me. Elizabeth could not help but mock Patty. I've done so many things that I've let you down before. Will you forgive me? Patty Jones saw that Elizabeth seemed to be easy to talk to and was calm, so she wanted to dispel all the grudges from her past. I believe that in the future, we won't have a chance to meet again. If I don't let it go, would I have to bear a grudge for the rest of my life? Elizabeth said helplessly. Then, Are you willing to plead for mercy to Mr. Wilson for me? Tell him not to refrigerate me." After Patty Jones shamelessly said this, she immediately pounced in front of her and squatted down, then pulled her arm and continued, "Elizabeth, you know that what I learned is acting. Being actor is my dreams. Please don't let my dreams be broken. I won't dare hurt you again. I promise." Elizabeth jumped in fright when Patty pounced over. May and Fiona, who were standing not too far away, ran over in a hurry, thinking that Patty was trying to harm Elizabeth. "What are you doing?" Elizabeth frowned. "I just want to beg you to help me. Besides you, there's no one else that can help me." Patty Jones started crying with a face full of grief and despair. "I can't even get through the gates of the company now. Mr. Wilson must hate me to death. Elizabeth, I will thank you. You must help me." Elizabeth's nature was pure. Seeing Patty Jones cry so hard with her mucus, Elizabeth did not know what to do. "If you don't help me, then I'll be at my wit's end. I'll die." Patty Jones's expression was sad. May, who was at the side, unkindly laughed out loud. "If you have known earlier, why would you have done what you do?" "That's right. If one's dream is more important than his life, then why would they go and seduce a man with ulterior motives?" Fiona also slashed at her again, though it was neither cold nor hot. Patty Jones' face was pale white. She lowered her head and stared straight at the floor. "All right, I can get Joshua to give you a chance to work, but I need you to give me a guarantee that you will never do something that would destroy other people's families' relationship again." Elizabeth was not stupid. On behalf of her aunt, she was willing to give Patty Jones a chance to turn over a new leaf. Save. Guarantee. Patty Jones' face was filled with panic. "That's right, it's a guarantee. You must write it down and sign it," Elizabeth said coldly. All right. After considering it over, Patty Jones still wanted to pass through this hurdle first. May immediately prepared a pen and paper. "Number 1, you must guarantee that you will never approach Joshua again, and you won't ruin our relationship, and you won't think of harming me anymore. Number 2, you must guarantee that you won't insult my aunt again." Elizabeth raised these 2 conditions. "All right, I agree." Patty Jones rejoiced secretly. Luckily, Elizabeth did not propose any harsher conditions. "Sign it," Elizabeth said indifferently. Patty Jones immediately wrote down these 2 conditions, signed them, and then casually left. However, a trace of resentment flashed across her face when Patty left the door. "The humiliation I have suffered today, I will definitely return it back to you in the future." Patty Jones slammed the door shut. Elizabeth began to worry in her heart. She never thought that her aunt would cause trouble for her with Barry. Why didn't she mention it? Elizabeth could only take out her phone and call her aunt. After greeting May and Fiona, she went upstairs. The call connected. Lily's gentle voice came out. "Eliza, today, Patty Jones comes to find me. She says that your relationship with Barry has gotten out of hand. Is it because of me?" Elizabeth asked in concern. "It's not like that. I have a relationship with him. And, can you tell me the truth?" Elizabeth interrupted her words anxiously. Lily knew that she would definitely pursue this matter to the end, so she could only sigh. "Before, I couldn't see that he was such a selfish person. But now, after seeing through it, I realize that I no longer love him that much. Aunt, Barry still loves you. Don't blame him. He only makes that decision because he is in a hurry." In the past, Elizabeth was young and did not understand, so she had hoped darkly that her aunt would divorce Barry. But now, She did not want to ruin their relationship. Chapter 1251. Something that required a lot of courage. Patty Jones thought that she had asked for Elizabeth's forgiveness, and that she would be able to recover soon. On the way back, her lips curled up. She was very happy, but just as she was about to drive around Star Entertainment Media once, her phone rang. Patty Jones saw the number and her mind exploded. She quickly stopped the car, turned on the phone, and answered. "Hey, Mrs. Wilson. Patty Jones, are you free? I want to talk to you alone." A solemn voice, like an invisible hammer, fiercely smashed down on her chest, causing Patty Jones's entire person to be unable to recover from her shock. "Is there something for you to look for me? You can talk it on the phone." Patty Jones smiled bitterly. "It's better if we meet and talk. Let's go to the place we agreed to meet before." Mrs. Wilson hung up after saying, "This damned old woman, does she also want to punish me?" Patty Jones held onto her phone uneasily. Her heart was filled with fear. Although she didn't want to see Mrs. Wilson, she didn't have the guts not to. Patty Jones fearfully carried her bag and walked over to the place where she had tea with Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson had been waiting there a long time ago. "Mrs. Wilson," Patty Jones walked over to greet her. "Sit down." Mrs. Wilson's gaze swept across her face, her voice cold. Patty Jones had a very bad premonition. It wouldn't be a good thing for Mrs. Wilson to look for her today. "2 days ago, news about your affair with my young grandson spread. It was you who intentionally dressed up as Elizabeth to seduce him, and wanted to take advantage of his drunkenness to harm him, right?" Although Mrs. Wilson was old, she couldn't just ignore the rumor about her grandson. "Mrs. Wilson, it is my fault. I don't dare to do it again. Please forgive me." Patty Jones immediately cried. She was really scared. "Elizabeth is pregnant. I decided to give her a chance. In the future, you don't do such a shameless thing again." Mrs. Wilson looked at Patty sternly and said, "Yes, I understand." "Mrs. Wilson, why do you suddenly accept her? Her mother is the murderer, and the one who she kills is your beloved son." "Shut up." Mrs. Wilson's expression changed drastically as she glared at Patty. "Stop it." Seeing that Mrs. Wilson was so angry that her face had turned white and that she had difficulty breathing, Patty was almost scared to death. If Mrs. Wilson was so angry that she fainted in here, Patty was afraid that Joshua would kill her. Although Patty really wanted to tear Elizabeth's happiness into shreds, she didn't dare to do it through the hands of Mrs. Wilson. Patty Jones could only silently hate Elizabeth in her heart. There was long time for her to take revenge. "If there is a second time such a scandal happens, I will tell my grandson about you cooperating with me in the act. Whether you can stay or not will depend on his decision," Mrs. Wilson angrily warned. "I don't dare to." "Mrs. Wilson, I beg of you to give me a chance to start anew." "I really don't dare." Patty Jones was so frightened that her legs trembled, and she knelt down once again. Her mood today had truly changed several times, and she had already lost control of her nerves. Mrs. Wilson did not spare Patty another glance as Mrs. Wilson stood up and walked towards the great walk outside. Patty Jones stood up from the ground in panic and quickly wiped away the tears on her face. Luckily it was a private room. No one came in to see, otherwise, she would lose even more face. Robin's recent life was suddenly interrupted. A reporter had been lying in ambush in front of the law firm's entrance, blocking her way. "Miss Robin, what is your relationship with Bryant?" We found out many times that he went to your district in the middle of the night. Excuse me, do you live together now? Miss Robin, when do you two get together? What is your relationship with him? Robin had merely been dragged by Bryant to his company's awards party to sit down for a while, and now she was entangled by a reporter. Each question was sharper than the last. We are just friends. Please move aside. I still need to work. Robin's beautiful face was burning hot. We are really curious. Miss Robin, why don't you tell us the truth? How could you, such a sacred profession, find a male star from the entertainment circle to be your boyfriend? Robin was simply unable to move forward, because there were 4 or 5 reporters who completely blocked half of the entrance. Don't do this. I'll call the guards if you keep doing this. Robin was angry, her expression cold. Due to Robin's professionalism, her expression was as cold as ice, causing some reporters to be truly shocked. Then they opened up a path and Robin quickly walked out. In one breath, she ran into the elevator, took out her phone, and called Bryant. There are reporters outside my office. What do we do? How do they really find me here? The only way is to admit our relationship. In any case, we will have to face it sooner or later, won't we? The man replied with a smile. No, if I admit it, then my life will not be peaceful. I don't agree. Robin was so scared that her face turned white. She couldn't publicize her life. If we are just friends, the reporters would naturally press closer together. If we are to get married, it would be a relationship between husband and wife, and they would have no rumors to dig up. Robin, you think about it. I will come to find you tonight. Bryant's tone was slightly nervous, and after he finished speaking, he hung up. Hey, Bryant, explain it to me clearly. What marriage? I don't want to marry anyone. Robin didn't believe it at all. Did Bryant even know what marriage was? The two of them were still in a hazy state of love, and yet he wanted to bring up the matter of marriage? Was the span too big? Robin's heart was hanging in midair, all the way until dusk. Robin was preparing to finish her work, when suddenly, she heard clamorous sounds coming from outside the door, mixed with the screams of women. Robin's scalp went numb, and she quickly rushed out of the office. At the entrance of the office, she saw Bryant holding onto a huge bunch of red roses, and standing there shyly. Bryant's nervousness was written all over his face. His handsome face was flushed red, but his bravery was worthy of praise. Standing at the door, he looked at Robin, who was walking quickly towards him. Suddenly kneeling down on one knee, with a sincere face, Bryant said, Robin, I request for you to marry me. Robin was scared silly by his sudden proposal of marriage. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. The screams and the cheers also seemed to have disappeared. All the women present looked with disbelief at Bryant, who was kneeling on the ground and proposing to Robin. Their male god suddenly descended from the sky, held a rose, and proposed to Robin, who was the one with the worst relationship with a man, the one with the worst peach blossom. All of their expressions changed from shock to sadness, and in the end, they could not accept it, and their expressions crumbled. Robin, I will take care of you for the rest of your life. I beg you to promise me. Bryant rushed back from another city, only because he heard her feeling helpless and uneasy on the phone. He also bought this bouquet of roses in a hurry, but when he took out the diamond ring box from his pocket, he said softly, I have bought the ring for a long time. I have never dared to ask you for a marriage proposal since, but today is the first time I have had the courage. I do not want to miss out on my happiness. Miss Robin, don't just stand there. Hurry up and agree. Right? Marry him. Suddenly, there were voices coming from the side. But just at this moment, a man walked over quickly. He was Robin's partner and even more so her loyal pursuer, Bill Pork. He walked over with an ugly expression. Suddenly he extended his hand and pushed Bryant away, and said angrily, "Bryant, stop your rampaging love. I don't believe that you truly want to marry Robin, don't you? A male celebrity's love life have always been rich. There is never a lack of women by your side. Robin is a proper woman. I won't allow you to play with her feelings." Bill, seeing that Bryant was almost pushed down by Bill Pork, Robin did not know where she got her strength from and quickly squatted down, extending her hand to grab Bryant. When Bill Pork saw that Robin had actually squatted down to protect Bryant, his expression became even more furious. "Robin, are you really going to marry him, this unreliable man?" Bill Pork felt that for male celebrities like Bryant, he was never lacking in suitors. Choosing Bryant was the biggest mistake Robin could make. Bryant did not refute anything, but kept his deep gaze quietly fixed on Robin's face. Chapter 1252, The Power of Love. Love was a matter between two people. No matter how noisy the surrounding world was, in Bryant's eyes, only the attitude of the woman in front of him was what he cared about the most. Robin raised her gaze slightly, and it collided with the man's pair of beautiful phoenix eyes. Bryant had a pair of perfect eyes, causing people to sink in with a single glance. But now, his eyes were filled with love. Looking at her deeply, Robin felt her heart beating even faster, her brain going into a state of hypoxia which imaged her unable to think. "Robin, is he the man that you rejected me?" Bill Pork had a crush on her for a long time. Last time, he mustered up his courage to gift Robin a bracelet to express his feelings, but he was rejected by Robin. Bill thought that the person who was pursuing Robin was a business elite who was much more outstanding than himself. Even in his dreams, he never thought that it would be the job that Robin disdained the most. He was a celebrity, moreover, was the most popular one recently. Hot idol star? Bill was really very unwilling. If the other party was a business prodigy or an elite in the industry, Bill Pork would still feel that his own abilities were insufficient. It was natural for Robin to not pick himself up, but this male celebrity who could throw him several streets with just her face and figure. Bill Pork's heart filled with dissatisfaction. When Robin saw that the people around her were all her colleagues, she suddenly calmed down. Maybe, if she was not forced, she really did not have the courage to admit that she had fallen in love with Bryant. This man was like fire, burning away her life, allowing her to repay the love that was cherished and pampered, to the point of being remembered by others. No matter how serious Robin's heart was, it could not be denied. "Yes, I love him," Robin's voice sounded within the silence, causing all the women around her to be shocked by her bold confession. They didn't expect that Robin, who they called Iron Lady and called an old spinster in the back, would actually fall in love with a man. What was even more hateful was that the one she loved was the male star Bryant that all her girls liked. "Robin, do you agree?" A look of ecstasy flashed across Bryant's handsome face. He thought that if he suddenly came here, he would be rejected outside the door. "Yes, I agree. I'm willing to marry you and be your wife." Robin's voice was firm. The bright eyes behind the pair of glasses hidden were filled with glimmers of tears. Bryant could have disregarded everything and ran over here to propose to her. How could she bear to make him sad? Bryant immediately pulled her into his embrace, pressed his lips against her hair and muttered, "Robin, thank you for not rejecting me again." The group of people next to him were all stunned, as if they were idiots. Countless expressions flashed across their faces. "Let's go back." Robin did not want others to see a scene like this again, so she held Bryant's hand and the two of them stood up. "Robin, you explain it. Didn't you hate men like them who didn't work and ate by their faces the most before? What's going on with you?" Bill Pork was so angry that he ignored his image and loudly questioned. Robin turned to look at him, and said with a calm tone, "Previously, I had misunderstood their occupation, but actually, there should not be any differences between the noble and lowly. In every profession, there are people who work hard to improve themselves, and he that I like, is also working hard for his career. Bill, I am sorry. I know you love me, but I have to withdraw my funds tomorrow." After Bill Pork finished speaking, he turned around and left. Robin was startled. Bill Pork wanted to withdraw his funds. Did he really hate her that much? Coming out from the office, Bryant held her hand tightly while thinking. It was obvious that her love life had gone smoothly, but her career had been hindered, which troubled her a little. "He wants to withdraw his funds. Is making things difficult for you?" Bryant in a low voice. "He owns 27% of the firm. If he wants to withdraw his funds, it will be a big challenge for our firm." Robin sighed. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come to your company to propose, but I really want them to know about us. This way, it can be considered fair to you. I want you to be my wife." Bryant especially blamed himself. "You are not in the wrong. I am not in the wrong either. You have the courage to come to my office and propose to me today. I am very happy, and also very touched." Really, Robin temporarily abandoned the pressure on her work and looked at the man in the driver's seat. Although her emotions were complicated, she was still happy. "Really?" Bryant smiled. "I know you want me to openly accept your feelings, so that I won't be scolded by others in the future," Robin said with a smile, as her entire person became gentle. "When will you take me to see your parents? As for my family, I only have my grandfather, who has passed away. I will bring you to his grave one day to toast to him." Bryant immediately thought about what he should prepare for his wedding. "You come here to propose today. Tomorrow, it will definitely be a scandal and my family will know about it. Wait until they call me, then we'll go over. There's no rush." Robin felt unexplainable sadness for him when she heard him mention his grandfather who passed away. Living alone in this world, no matter how successful one's career was, he would still feel lonely. Suddenly, she wanted to form a family with him so that he could go his family. "That's fine. I'm just worried that your family won't accept me. After all, my career is a little sensitive." Bryant laughed at himself. "That won't happen. My family would urge me to get married every day, as if they are afraid that I wouldn't be able to get married. My mom also said that as long as I can bring a boyfriend back for her to see, she would immediately give me the dowry." Robin was happy when she mentioned her family. Although she was not born into a rich family, well, her parents protected her, doted on her, and treated her like a treasure in their hands. Even though they said every day that they would marry, she was already 26 or 27 years old. But they did not really want to urge her to get married. "Really? Then hurry up and bring me back to see your mom. Maybe if she's happy, she really will give you to me as a gift," Bryant said with a smile. Robin rolled her eyes as she said, "You really know how to take advantage of people. I don't think I've ever taken advantage of you before. You can't be so unfair to me." Bryant scanned his body with a dark gaze. Hearing his flippant words, Robin's face suddenly turned red. After returning home, Robin was about to turn on the light when she was suddenly grabbed by the man. Then, she heard the sound of the door being closed. "Bryant, what are you doing?" Robin felt herself being held by a big hand. With a spin, she fell into a warm and firm embrace dizzily. She was so shocked that her breathing stopped. The man's low and charming voice sounded in her ear. "Don't you say that I have taken advantage of you? If I do not take this opportunity, won't I really suffer this injustice?" Robin was speechless. This man really did find a good excuse. A warm palm was held onto her pink cheeks. Robin's breathing trembled. It was obvious that this was the first time she felt this kind of tender and exquisite sensation. Her body stiffened up into a straight line, and her pair of beautiful eyes flickered very quickly in the dim light. "Close your eyes." When Bryant saw that her eyes were shining brightly, he couldn't help but mutter to her. Robin actually listened to him. When she closed her eyes, she felt a man's thin lips gently pressing against hers. Unknowingly, Robin's entire body began to soften as she leaned into the man's embrace and felt his sincerity and warmth. Maybe he had restrained himself for a long time, but when he touched her soft body, Bryant's entire body tensed up. "Robin!" Bryant called out her name. Yes, the woman's body was still trembling in his embrace, a completely unfamiliar feeling that made her instantly fall in love. Was this the magic of love? Previously, she always felt that hugging was a very scary thing. But now, she actually wanted to stay in that man's embrace and didn't want to get up. I'll turn on the light." Bryant didn't dare to continue, because he was afraid that he would lose control. "Don't turn on the light." "Bryant, don't you want to do something else?" Robin suddenly said. Chapter 1253, The Appearance of Love. The words that were filled with invitation, accompanied with the shy voice of the woman, rang beside Bryant's ears. He thought for a few moments that he had misheard. Was that right? "Robin, do you know that you're playing with fire?" The man's voice instantly grew hoarse. Actually, Bryant had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. He was already 26 years old, and even if he could suppress his rationality one time after another, his body had nearly lost control several times. "I only know that when you meet someone who loves you, you can do what you want to do. Don't think of me as an ignorant girl. I know what I'm doing and am responsible for myself." Robin leaned into his embrace, her smooth and soft voice carrying the most feminine of feelings. Robin Bryant was still pleasantly surprised, because this woman was also very rational towards such things. He was truly afraid that it would be a sin for him to think too much before marriage. It seemed that not only he wanted more, but also her. In Robin's heart it was as if a flame had burned her heart. She didn't know how to extinguish it, so she could only continue to burn it to find out the unknown area of men and women. She was not afraid, but nervous and curious. The woman in his embrace was as tender as water, and Bryant's breathing became heavier and heavier. Finally, Bryant still kissed her lips with his trembling lip. After 10 minutes or so, the lights suddenly lit up, and Bryant perspired as she looked at the blushing lady wrapped in the blanket. It was so humiliating that he had tried a few times and failed. If it really spread out, the face of his big star did not know where to hide his face. while Miss Robin, who didn't know a thing about men and women, had her head lowered as well. Her body clearly sent out a signal. Why was she still so nervous that she couldn't breathe? Why don't we just forget about it today and continue tomorrow? Bryant was so anxious that his head was covered in sweat from the cold weather. His handsome face was flushed red, and his voice was obviously bitter. Yes, I agree. Robin nodded strongly. After reaching a common understanding, the two of them suddenly couldn't help but laugh out loud. He had tried many times but to no avail. He really didn't know what the problem was. Sorry, it's all my fault. I'm afraid of pain. Robin lowered her head innocently and said softly, "It's fine. We have a long time ahead of us anyway." Bryant comforted her gently. "Am I disappointed you?" Robin took all of this fault on herself, because when she yelled for it to hurt, Bryant stopped all his movements and comforted her softly. "No, it's much bigger than I think. Besides, your figure is really good." Bryant laughed humorlessly. Robin angrily glared at him, and then she imitated his tone. "You do not disappoint me either." Bryant thought back to what she had said, and his handsome face instantly flushed red. "Robin, as a woman, you are not enough." Bryant had to teach her. Robin chuckled. "I feel like it's already very conservative of me to wait for you." "Okay." Bryant was startled. Then he extended his hand and pulled her into his embrace, and said gently, "Robin, I'm very happy to meet you. I hope we can continue living like this, and not separate anymore. I'm the one who doesn't feel safe, right? Today at the office, I finally experience your charm. For you, I might have to face bankruptcy and unemployment." Robin thought about the girls in the office who were staring at her as if she was their rival. She was afraid that not only would she lose a partner, she would also lose a lot of female employees. "Don't be afraid, I will help you. From tomorrow on, I will give you all my bank cards. If you don't have any money, just take it and swipe it. I will work hard to earn money." Bryant also blamed himself. Because of his appearance, he had caused her to lose an important partner. "That's what you say. If Bill Pork really wants to withdraw his capital, I really need your money to make up for the vacancies, but I won't let you spend your money for nothing. I will make you one of the partners." Ugh. Before Robin could finish her sentence, her lips were covered by the man's. After being stunned for a while, he was finally let go. "Are you still talking about me? Yours? Do you really have to be so clear on what I'm talking about? In the future, I will be yours, not to mention my money. You only need to spend my money and mine. You have the right to do so." Bryant was really afraid that he would hear her say such polite words that would make him feel insecure. "Okay, it's all mine. All mine. You're mine too." Robin laughed and displayed her power that was like a queen. They had a crush on each other and the two of them didn't want to be separated. They carried each other on the bed for a long time until an incompatible voice sounded. "I go cook." Robin burst out laughing. "I don't have time to eat lunch, so I come looking for you." A look of embarrassment flashed across Bryant's handsome face. This was too embarrassing. He might not be able to protect his pride as a man in the future. "I'll make you something to eat." Robin heard his shy explanation and felt her heart warm. Robin took out a white shirt of her and put it on before walking down from the bed. As the white shirt blocked the view, Robin was too lazy to wear anything else, so she just walked straight up to the kitchen with her beautiful snow-white legs. Bryant sat on the bed, looking at her beautiful legs. He felt the courage he had just shown to conquer her once again. Bryant anxiously got off the bed, casually put on a jacket and followed her out. Robin was in the middle of opening the refrigerator to see if there was anything that could be cooked for him to eat immediately. After rummaging through the food, she found that it was only the fastest one. Luckily, there were still tomatoes and eggs which could still be considered nutritious. When Robin was standing in the kitchen to make noodles, Bryant was like a scoundrel as he stood behind her. His strong arms would occasionally wrap around her slender waist and his thin lips would rest on her shoulder as he watched her do all of this. "All right, stop messing around. Can you let me make this bowl of noodles in peace?" Robin was amused by him to the point of giggling. "No, I've always felt that you are better than this one." Bryant wasn't an insatiable man, but at this moment, he couldn't control himself, and wanted to stick to her and not let go. "All right, you might not be full just now, so you don't have much strength. When you're full, we can try again." Robin laughed and attacked him. Bryant's handsome face stiffened, and immediately sucked hard on her neck, causing a red mark to appear immediately. What are you doing?" Robin immediately reached out to touch it. "Nothing, I just want to let those men outside know that you have husband," Bryant said sinisterly. "Boring. Then do I have to leave an imprint on your body? You're even more attractive than me," Robin asked back with an unconvinced expression. "I will bring your name here tomorrow. After I untie your belt, I will be able to see your name." Bryant grabbed her hand and stuck it onto his firm abdominal muscles. Robin trembled. What kind of hobby was that? "It's better not to. This is too embarrassing." Robin could be more serious. She did not have that many appearances. "I don't feel embarrassed." "What were you afraid of?" "It's a deal. I'll go to do it tomorrow," Bryant said with a serious face, as if he had truly made this decision. "Fine, you're the tattoo. I won't stop you." On Robin's pretty face, there was an expression that said it was hard to refuse a favor. Bryant glanced to the side and suddenly took off her glasses mischievously. "Hey, stop messing around." Robin only felt her vision become blurry, and immediately laughed in anger as she cried out, "Your eyes are so beautiful, it's a waste to cover them." What Bryant said was the truth. Robin had a pair of extremely enchanting almond eyes. When they blinked, they looked like butterfly wings, captivating him. "I want to make you a noodle. Hurry up and give it back to me." Robin blushed when she was praised by him. "I'll do it. You stay outside." Bryant grabbed her wrist and brought her out of the kitchen. After that, he came in and picked up the things she did not finish and continued doing them. Robin lifted her glasses and gently put it back on. Her vision was filled with clarity as she saw the man skillfully stirring the eggs with chopsticks. Her heart went numb. For this moment, her happiness was indescribable. "I just wanted time to be quiet." Chapter 1254. Take a wife and marry a man. In a strict office, the atmosphere was terrible. A man with half a head of white hair was sitting on the sofa with an ugly expression. He was Mr. President, who was in his 60s, was holding two bowls made from white jade in his hands. His fingers were rolling, and the sound he squeezed out was the only sound in this room. His gaze landed on the flag on the table. The look in his eyes became even more terrifying, fiercely sweeping his gaze over to the side. John Wilson's heart trembled. It seemed that he had lost the president's trust in his slow actions. "Don't you say that there is a way to obtain control over the Wilson family? Your so-called method would be waiting for a day when Dempsey fell ill or died from a calamity, so that you could take advantage of the situation, right?" The president sneered. It was clear how disappointed and angry he was right now. Mr. President, you're still joking around. If Dempsey really have such a short lifespan, I can look forward to it. But now, John Wilson said a half. He was shocked by the president's dignified gaze. Can't you know that I mean you're incompetent? John Wilson, I have already allowed you to hold multiple positions in a few big enterprises. Your identity is not bad, but the only thing that is bad is your status as the owner of the Wilson family. Hurry up and make Dempsey give up his inheritance right. Don't you see that Joseph Grant's reputation is increasing? I just get the news that Joseph Grant is preparing to improve Street Hacker. With $10 billion of funds, Dempsey will definitely support him from behind. I also hear that old Master Miller is also preparing to ask his granddaughter to marry Joseph, and since Miller family doesn't have any other abilities, they just has to stay in the 100 inches of land and create an area for everyone else to settle down, so that Toomer will gradually become another part of the city under Joseph Grant's construction. If this is done by him, then would I be driven down as nothing? Old President's face turned dark. He threw the two jades in his hands heavily onto the glass table in front of him, smashing it into pieces. It was extremely terrifying. John Wilson and the few other people present all had ashen faces. John Wilson, I do not care what method you use. In this period of time, you have to prevent this from happening. If Wilson family is not willing to contribute, then this matter will not be able to proceed successfully. You have to do it well. Your future will be bright. If you fail, Bart is a good example. It will be easy to be over. Old President's eyes were fixated on John Wilson, as if John was infected by poison. All his hope was placed on John. John Wilson stood up in panic, and received the order while bending over. Please be at ease. I will definitely make Wilson family in a mess. All right, let go of this bet. A bright future is just in front of us. We don't have much time. So if we win the next election, you all will be my big helpers. Old President smiled and encouraged them. Your Excellency, the Miller family wants to marry his granddaughter to Joseph Grant. Such a match made in heaven must be a bad thing for us, right? Someone beside him suddenly suggested. Old President squinted his eyes and sneered. I heard that this young Miss Miller doesn't seem to like this marriage. Once she heard about it, she fled to other countries. If it's a bad fate, we should try our best to make it happen. If Joseph Grant were to spread the rumors about him forcefully marrying a beautiful wife, it would not be a good thing for his reputation. Your Excellency has thought it through. I will investigate and see how their relationship is progressing. Okay, do it clearly. Joseph Grant is very cautious towards women. When I first introduced my daughter to him, he only see her for a while. Humph, I raised my daughter to such an outstanding person, and he actually dares to reject me, just based on this point. I do not want to let him off. Old President clenched his fists tightly, thinking about how his daughter had been soulless for Joseph Grant for more than half a year. He couldn't help but feel infuriated. Joseph Grant is too blind. How can he match the noble women? Yes, it is said that Joseph Grant is sick. That's why he isn't close to a woman. He may be afraid that he will lose his dignity as a man. And no one know if that's true or not. Another person said in a vicious voice, no matter what secrets he has, I just hope that the marriage between him and the young Miss of Miller family is not too happy. If the two of us do not feel it, and we fight head-on, it will be extremely beneficial for us. And if they love each other, then that girl is his biggest weakness. We can use it as an excuse to win. In short, since it is our plan, we cannot sit idly and wait for death. Old President's words were fierce, but his will to fight was still there. Sir, do you want to try some more? It's neither expensive nor time consuming. It can play a key role to treat Joseph. So does Dempsey. Some people continued to make suggestions from the side. The heroes of the realm are sad about beauty. Of course, this is the best strategy, not only to deal with Joseph Grant, but also to deal with Dempsey. It is definitely not a bad choice. John Wilson suddenly laughed sinisterly by the side. Beauty is hard to find. Do you all have any good candidates? Old President shrewdly swept his eyes across the group of people. There are quite a few candidates. As long as they are added to the training, it will definitely be a success. A senior official quickly replied. All right, pick a suitable candidate. You must succeed. The president slapped down with his palm. At this moment, Wilson family, Dempsey's work was getting busier and busier. When he returned home, it was already past 10 at night. Feeling guilty, he went to the children's room to see the children, and even planted a kiss on each of their foreheads. He really wanted to be a good and dutiful father. He wanted to give time and love to these two precious children. It was a pity that the current situation was extremely intense and there were frequent accidents within the company. Although Dempsey was able to manage the entire company by himself with exceptional ability, he had expended a lot of energy. The only thing he could do was to return as early as possible to accompany his family. Dempsey pushed open the door to the bedroom. Seeing that Claire was still sitting on the sofa and drawing, his tensed nerves suddenly relaxed. He walked to her back, bent over, and gently hugged her. Why do you always work so late to sleep? Claire heard the man's low reproach. I am waiting for you. Claire laid her head close to Dempsey and replied softly. Don't I already say that you don't wait any longer? If you're tired, you should go to bed. Dempsey pitied her. No, I have to wait for you to come back before I go to sleep, Claire stubbornly said. Dempsey laughed involuntarily. His smile was as rich as fine wine, causing Claire to feel somewhat embarrassed. I really can't do anything about you. You love me so much, so I feel very pressured. Someone instantly became narcissistic. Claire put down the brush, took out the piece of paper, and showed it to him. The way you sleep. Dempsey stopped smiling. He reached out to take it, and saw that the woman was not working, but drawing his portrait, and it looked like he was sleeping. He really is good looking. He does everything in this world with a good looking face. Someone continues to be narcissistic. Claire rolled her eyes speechlessly. Then let me draw a picture of you in the bathroom tomorrow. I'll see if you're still narcissistic. You won't, you can't bear to. Dempsey laughed, and hugged her again. His tiredness of the day was gone because of the delicate body in his arms. Claire, I've been too busy recently. Can you understand me? Dempsey asked as he blamed himself. Claire nodded her head. Of course, everything you do is to protect this family. I can understand that. That's my good fortune that you can understand me. I am really afraid that you would think too much, Dempsey muttered softly. I can't imagine that you don't come home for any other reason. Dempsey, you give me enough security, so I'm willing to believe you. Claire waved the tip of her foot. Her pink lips kissed the man's chin. My greatest wish with the children is for you to be able to return home safely. I will. Dempsey was touched beyond belief. When a man suffered from such immense pressure, What he wanted to hear the most was the comfort of his family. Right now, he felt that no matter how fierce the storm outside was, as long as the home he protected was warm, everything was worth it. Take a bath, hurry up and sleep. Claire softly pushed his chest and said with a low voice, "Okay, wait for me." Dempsey heard the hidden meaning in her words, and his beautiful eyes instantly revealed a deep smile. Claire looked at him strangely, then pulled up her blanket and crawled onto the bed. When Dempsey came out from the shower, he thought that the woman would put on a bewitching pose to welcome him, but she had already fallen asleep like a little pig. Did he take the wrong script? It shouldn't be like this. Dempsey's expression froze.